Hello, welcome back. How are you? Are we feeling well? I don't know how to start this one. I've thought quite a bit about this video. I've had it planned for a while, particularly because the things that, okay, let me just say it. Let me just say it, guys. I want to talk about art as art and like it's all of its forms as a sort of personal mythology. Now, you might be like, what the big? Let me first explain to you why I wanted to do this. So, I first wanted to talk about this because I think the things that we create have a tremendous capacity for demonstrating our lives. I often reflect on the fact that, like, when I think about my life, it's segmented in these kind of eras. When I was doing digital work, it was super, like, I was fucking crazy. I was a fucking digital powerhouse, guys. Like, I was putting out work, fuck if I know, like, every goddamn second. And the worst part is, I was working full time and I was in school full time and I was unmedicated. What the hell? Anyways, I was creating work like so consistently, but now that I'm making like bigger stuff and my projects are a bit more grand scheme, like shit takes a while now. Shit takes a lot longer now. That I started to like kind of really associate the works that were in the works during specific segments of my life. And then I started to think about like how that might apply beyond, and other people have talked about this. Other people have talked about how like art and its role in mythology. Yeah, this is really about like work that you've made either with intention or not that kind of has this like outcome of constructing a narrative around your life or a significance and representation of your life as an artist, not just like visual arts. Obviously, when I say artist, I mean person who creates things. It doesn't need to be literal. Like, I don't think like, you know, how we look at a lot of like Baroque or Renaissance art and it's very narrative. I don't necessarily mean that. I mean anything that just represents you and in that time. And mythology, like when we talk about myth, it's stories, right? And so how can we have art as personal mythology? How can we have art as stories without being like such a visual representation, in a more literal sense? Like, I'm not here to like show Socrates's what's that painting? It's based off of Plato's recollection of Socrates's execution by the state. And it's incredibly symbolic and it's representative of this entire experience that did happen. There's a lot of symbolism, a lot of things that like kind of enhance this because it's from, you know, more of this like dramatization, if you will. And so the question kind of becomes like, how do we do that if we're not going to be like so fucking like straight up like here's what I'm looking at? I don't know. Like, when you have work that is like nevertheless a demonstration of personal stories, identities, uh experiences, and they become fucking relatable. I'm not here looking at, no offense, the scene leading up to it. He's got the hemlock, he's like talking to the people, he's not upset but everyone else is. There's like symbols galore. Yeah, so like how do we, you know, even unintentionally create a series of personal mythology or just work that represents this kind of or becomes this personal mythology? And I think we do so because of the way that we overflow into our work. And I always say to my friends and whatever that my art is the part of me that overflows. It's the part of me that like I can't keep inside. It's still me. It's this extension of the self. It's something that like I'm putting out into the world. And so it kind of innately has this feature of becoming personal mythology because it's happening. And it becomes a visual representation or, you know, a written representation of my thoughts, feelings, and experiences at the time, regardless of kind of how that shows up. Even when it's particularly like more abstract, like a lot of my stuff is a little bit more of that assemblage, like collage, kind of like random shit. And yeah, like everything that I do is quite journalistic. I think a lot of art that we put out into the world is quite journalistic, even if you can't exactly like detect finer details or take things as literally. We have this kind of like presentation that is in some ways like able to be interpreted, and that's predominantly through symbols and through kind of shared experiences of color and of shape and of sensation. It's like that, what's that, I'm not gonna say the Kiki and Boba. Am I making shit up? Kiki and Boba.
Kiki and Boba.
anyways, how we have like these understandings of things, and that's obviously sound and how we have visual representations, whatever, but we have things in our lives that we have other associations with. But yeah, like a lot of my work, when we talk about personal mythology, we obviously want to talk about the personal, we want to talk about mythology, and mythology again is stories, and personal is kind of just like this chronological like process of relaying our lives. And though like some of my work is quite vulnerable and more in a literal sense, like my essays, even if they're not directly talking about what I'm talking about, they're pretty close. My poetry a little bit more distant. I love symbols in poetry. I make shit up as I go in poetry. But in my essays, they're very much like what I'm going through, kind of live, kind of like what's happening in that exact fucking moment. At the end of the day, like what I try to do in my work is connected to the universal. So what am I going through that is even worth you hearing? And it's not my experience that's valuable to you, right? It's the relatedness that we experience through the sharing of our stories and our personal mythology. So it's not again that like actual use of the situations, but the way that we use our situations to be a means to an end, and that is through relation and through understanding. And yeah, like to me, my paintings are a great example. My writing is a bit more like segmented just by like the essays themselves being the kind of these individual projects, but and poetry being very much like a micro essay in that way. When we look at my paintings take minimum a month, like minimum a month. And so they feel to me like a progression through my life. I can identify like, okay, what was I creating during that time? What was going on in that time that inspired those things? I can associate like in my head, I'm crazy. So I like am very date fixated. So you can ask me when things happen, and I usually have a pretty good idea of like the month and year that that happened. I know like the things that happened in my life coexisted with these things that I'm presenting to the world. And so yeah, like I said, they present like kind of these eras. They show the fears, the thoughts, the experiences, the what was going through my mind, what was I growing through, what parts of my life am I examining. I'm a heavily existential and introspective person. I live a lot in my head, and there's things that I spent parts of my life that required more intimate attention that I was tending to. Those conversations didn't happen with others, they happened with work. And yeah, so like art can feel in all capacities like this kind of like alchemical process, because we take our lives, we transform it into these like more digestible, palatable ways that other people can understand. It can be really interesting and not at all realistic, right? Like it doesn't have to be like so literal, which some people it can be, and that's great. But it's like, yeah, it's like art can become a way that we show without being like as direct as we might otherwise be. But yeah, it's not like when I have these things that I'm presenting, it's not that it happened, right? It's not that it happened, and like it's not that A happened, so B is how I felt, and then because I felt B, I did C, and then C had this happen, and blah, 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 blah. It's this is where I'm at. This is what how I'm feeling. This is the best way for me to show it to you. And so art, like in any variety, kind of becomes this language where we use symbols and metaphors and present the best we can, like our lives. And if you're like me, and you don't know really what you're trying to say, these sort of unconscious mechanisms for communication can be really, really helpful in demonstrating and teaching yourself. Like I said, maybe I said, did I say? I learn from my pieces more than like I put into it. Like I take away so much more than I put into it. And the labor I put into these pieces is so journalistic in a sense that like I get out and I go, oh, that's what I was thinking, feeling, and going through, more so than like the literal kind of interpretation of my life. I learned through the process of like externalizing these experiences. And yeah, like the best part about using symbols and metaphors and having art as this kind of demonstration of your personal mythology is that it's not just like this, here is an art piece. Here is like whatever, this is what I'm demonstrating. It's that you're dealing with pools of information and connections are made afterwards. This leaves a lot of room for mystery, right? This is mystery for me, the artist, who's like figuring out how I got here. What am I doing? What the fuck is on the canvas? There's a hole in it. Like, what am I writing? What am I trying to say? But also for others who may use their work to like kind of navigate their own experiences or contextualize their own experiences or find relatedness or relatability or whatever it is you're seeking, connection or understanding. Yeah, there's just like so many ways for us to like learn about the message coming through, and that's kind of what that space, that like abstraction and this not so literal presentation can kind of give us. Some things can be super literal. It's not so much like this is what is happening or what has happened or this kind of like historical, like it obviously makes sense historically we did these things to keep track of history, we can do so in a different way. And still in the first way, but we can have this variety because we're not trying to be so literal. I'm not trying to document in a more like technical chronology. I'm trying to like show you this is what is happening without being like this is what happened. And so yeah, it's more of like presenting an essence. That's what comes through the work. Like when we're trying to make sense of the world, I have this piece behind me. I'll show you the full piece. I'm trying to make sense of this. I'm trying to make sense of what I'm going through. And I'm not saying that I'm a fish in a bag, right? I'm not saying I'm a fish in a bag. That's what this piece is all about. I'm the fish in the bag in a literal sense. I am trying to say that, like, look at where the fish in the bag is. It's in a pool of water. What do you mean? It's not about the literalism of the fish in the bag, but what is happening. The sensation of being so close to freedom that, like, the reality of your experience is both taunting and suffocating. That's what I'm showing you. That's what I'm feeling. Maybe it's not what you see, but that's what I'm demonstrating. And we all know what that's like. We are not fish, probably not fish, and we're probably not in a bag. And we're probably not a fish in a bag in a pool of water. If my reason for feeling like a fish in a bag in a pool of water is because of a shitty job or difficult family dynamics or just kind of like feeling trapped or, you know, this sensation of like being so close to what you want that it's like kind of fucking annoying. My reasons are my reasons, but you don't see that. You see the sensations, the essence. What am I feeling? And your reasoning could be shitty job or complicated family dynamics or being so close to something that it's really fucking annoying. That's for you to feel and for you to bring those experiences to meet me in the middle there. And your reasons and motivations for looking at these symbols will meet me where I'm at. And yeah, I always use my work as like living documents. I don't create a piece and decide this is what it means because oftentimes I don't know when I create something. I always create things for aesthetic reasons and then the meaning comes out and that's how the pieces are strengthened. So like this piece, I was just like, it'd be cool to put a fish in a bag. And I did that. Why did I connect with that? And that's where the messaging kind of comes through. And I don't feel like feelings and experiences are entirely isolated. The influence is there. I'm a person. The chronology of my life is there. I can remember my life in these month-long kind of eras. I can remember that I was feeling lost or spiteful or joyful or afraid, or I was looking at these art. Like these are all the overarching themes I was exploring at that time in my life. So yeah, like when I'm creating, like you really, if you're creating, you're entering a world in which you are in some ways documenting the symbolic unraveling of your life and you're sharing that with others, and you are able to learn from your story in a less literal sense the more abstract you are, but you're still learning in the same way that you would if you were looking at things through abstraction of what your life is actually like. And you look at that with like memoirs, people who write memoirs, you get these overarching themes because you have that zoom out, right? You're not just like so close to it that you're like, okay, I have a difficult family dynamic, or I have a shitty job, or I have, I don't know, you're going through a tough breakup, or a shitty, I don't know, roommate situation, or you're dealing with extreme amounts of love or joy, or I don't know. The human experience is so variant, and like you have so much variance in your experience from mine that you can document that however you want. And I think it's really incredible that we have these kind of cool ways of like scrapbooking and like really, really keeping track of where we are. And it doesn't have to be so like April 23rd, this happened. May 7th, this happened. I saw a movie today. I gave it 3 stars. And it can be more of these reflections on the kind of greater existential themes of our lives. It's the zoom out. That's all it is, baby. And that's what mythology is, right? It's through the use of symbols, we're teaching these universal themes. And if our lives become symbols and we translate our lives through symbols, it becomes meaningful and abstract in that way. Symbols are such a cool concept if you really do get into it. If you're into mythology, hit me up because we probably would get along. Mythology is so interesting. Stories are so interesting in the way that humans document our lives and historically have these both written and oral traditions is just like so fascinating and sentimental. And like how cool is it that humans are just so sentimental? That's like such a, I don't know, it's such a human thing to do. I don't know if other animals tell stories. We don't know that. I just kind of wanted to talk about that. I don't really know how to close this off because mythology and personal mythology is a continuous thing. And it's probably very similar to other people's stories. If you study stories in mythology, a lot of it repeats itself. even if it's different ways we present these things. We present things like don't lie to people, with like the boy who cries wolf, and like, you know, we talk about trust. Why won't that work? I don't know. We have so many cool ways of showing trusting people and why like it matters. And that's like just one tiny fragment of the human experience. Obviously, it's huge, but it's still so tiny and it shows up so broadly. And yeah, your personal mythology, the things that you create, these are all documents of that, living documents, artifacts. Anyways, that's all I have to say. So take care.